Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and all joining us online via the Cricket West Indies YouTube channel. On behalf of Cricket West Indies, I want to thank you for being here as we share our strategic plans and next steps for the 2025-2026 period. Today's session is about transparency, accountability, and charting the way forward for West Indies cricket. The purpose of today's briefing is to update the public on our stakeholders on recommendations coming out of the recent emergency cricket strategy meeting and to outline the immediate and long-term actions being taken to strengthen West Indies cricket, both on and off the field. My name is Randy Howard. I am the PR and Media Manager at Cricket West Indies. And with me here on the panel this morning, we have Mr. CEO Chris Derrin on my left, President Dr. Kishore Shallow to his left, and to his left is Director of Cricket Miles Bascom. Now, before we proceed to the various presentations, I want to take this moment to make valued members of the media aware of the rules of engagement for today's briefing. The Q&A segment will come at the very end, allowing you to make your notes on the information shared during each presentation and for questions to flow freely until the end of today's engagement. For those who have joined us online via the Share Teams link, we ask that you use your raise your hand function, which will automatically place you into a queue. Once your name has been called, your mic will be unmuted, and you will proceed with your questions, introducing yourself and your associated media house. And you can direct your questions either to an individual on the panel or to the general audience. We ask that you keep your questions clear and concise so that we can hear from many users as possible. So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Kishore Shallow, our president, to set the stage and provide a strategic overview of the board's position and its commitment to these next steps. I now invite President Shallow.
Thanks, Randy. Good morning, everyone. Happy always to see the staff. Greetings to those online and all the media houses. It's great to be here to continue our staying committed to our quarterly engagement with the public. Again, as Randy said, transparency is extremely important to us. And we know, as always, people are happy to talk about West Indies cricket. And we much prefer to be involved in those conversations than just be on the sideline observing. So this is really our way to have these direct interactions with the public, obviously through the media houses. And let me start by congratulating the awardees of the contracts. I think we made the announcement yesterday that we have, I think it's 32 men on contracts. Got contracts, and I think it's 29 female. That is incredible. I know our CFO, scratching her head in terms of payment to those in challenging time, probably our CEO as well. But we believe that is important to, one, obviously commend and give credit to those performing, our players, and of course to ensure that they remain committed to West Indies cricket. We know that there are tremendous opportunities out there for them, and so we have to reward them, incentivize them really and justly. And for the academy players, of course, it's just great to be able to afford them the opportunities, the opportunity to keep developing, and that is by obviously ensuring that they're focused on cricket. And we can't really overstate the importance of retaining those academy players. Just a couple of years ago, we only had boys involved. Now to have equally women engaged all year round, I think that's a tremendous development for West Indies cricket. I'm sure we'll see the fruits of that in the future. Now, I want to zoom in this morning on our strategic plan, because that will put things into context in terms of where we are from the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan, and hopefully it brings some comfort in terms of where we are currently, especially financially. So our strategic plan, and I want to commend Linford our COO, for coming up with this name, the long run. The long run, and it's quite appropriate, and it's something that can remind us every day in the organization as to, how we plan to achieve what we want and get those favorable outcomes. And the long run, it wasn't when he explained to me why we should go with the long run. And, after probing and, scrutinizing the entire ecosystem of cricket and so on, it could not have been more appropriate to have that name, the long run. And so, we're talking about fast bowling, and I believe fast bowling is probably the hardest, aspect of the game for a player, right? Wicket keepers might beg to differ, but I would say fast bowling. And it's because of the fact that it requires a level of discipline, patience, real hard work. And then at times you get injuries. Fast bowlers obviously pick up the most injuries in the game. And that throws them off. They have to find ways to come back. They have to find ways to navigate the system. And when you look at West Indies cricket, you're almost thinking, wow, we are probably all fast bowlers here off the field. But ultimately, I think that we understand that being a successful organization requires us to be extremely calculated and measured with our approach. And we need to be persistent, stay true to those things that we know are best practices. And sometimes it comes with difficult decisions, certainly difficult situations require difficult decisions, and so we have to stay true to what our focus is. And so, let me just zoom in and quote particularly from the strategic plan, right, in terms of why we came up with this name. And it says that we will recognize the success in cricket, like in the strategic planning, requires deliberate and persistent effort over time. So over the strategic plan timeline, 2024 to 2027, we would have anticipated different scenarios and realized that there are times we're going to be celebrating and there are other times they're going to be very difficult and they're going to require special intervention and decision making, tightening of the belt, and so on. But similarly, we have enjoyed some success since 2024, right? And those success, obviously, I think leading would be the World Cup, which we were extremely successful at executing. I don't know where we would have been without such success last year. Also, I still remain confident in the Caribbean Cage project, the initiative, where there's a potential for us to generate some $100 million over 10 years. But again, as anticipated, it would take a couple of years to get going. So that too is something that we could celebrate. But by and large, we would agree that the conditions, the playing conditions, they're extremely tricky. If we use a batting perspective, now I'll take it from a batting perspective. You're talking about almost, I don't know if it's spin-friendly wicket or bouncy wicket, right? Both, both at the same time. So we could probably adopt a Brian Lara approach in that what we do, we understand the conditions and we know it requires that level of discipline and calculation. And so we have to navigate the tides together, right? I believe that there's absolutely no secret that we have a chronic financial situation. In that the international model at this point, the financial model from ICC, it is not favorable to a small region like ours. And so it makes it even more difficult for us to navigate the way. And it's something we'll keep championing at the ICC level, of course, myself and Chris, our CEO. But in the meantime, we have to ensure that we optimize our resources here in the Caribbean. We have to ensure that we continue to collaborate with our stakeholders. And that is really the only way we could continue to enjoy any sort of success. And with that, I'm quite comforted with some of the discussions we have been having. Very recently, we had a couple meetings with President Orphan Ali, who is the chair of the cricket subcommittee at CARICOM. And very fruitful indeed, and very promising. The challenge is always to follow through and execute. But indeed, some great conversations had. Certainly, there's goodwill with CARICOM. They want to help Cricket West Indies. They want to collaborate with us. And we are as open as ever to collaborate and even strengthen our relationship. Because as I've said from day one, we can't do this thing together. And at no point, there's no record to show that, in fact, not only me, but my predecessors, recently as Ricky, Dave, right, we have never indicated that we want to do this together. On the contrary, we have said that we want to collaborate with every stakeholder in the region, right, who wants to be part of developing cricket. Because we know cricket means so much to the people in the region. And we also understand fully that our resources here at Cricket West Indies is extremely limited. And so it is only a collaborative effort that is going to help us to achieve anything close to our true potential. And so I want to say that, you know, despite our challenging situations from time to time, and you'll hear from Chris soon about, you know, those difficult scenarios that we are faced with, especially financially, I am pleased that we have, I would argue, and some may say I bias, but I believe we have the most competent staff in the entire region, right, that will help us to make those prudent decisions that are going to get us through any situation, right? And with that, we do have very skillful players. We have never been short of talent on the field. But we just have to, you know, ensure, try our best to give them, you know, create the environment that is conducive to their development and have them performing at their very best. And I think we do have the staff, the backroom staff, management, coaches, and systems that we could get better results there as well. But all in all, I think it's safe to say that here at Cricket West Indies, you know, we are committed to the mission. We are committed to ensure we grow and promote the game of cricket, be on the global stage, being respected as one of the leading forces in the game. And I think regardless of, you know, inconsistency with the performance and so on, we are respected for that. And most people, you know, they are hoping at some point they could see more favorable results for us, because every part of the globe, you know, you feel that love for West Indies cricket. And with us staying true to the mission, we obviously keep our eyes firmly on our vision. And that vision is to continue to be one of the leading forces, not only in cricket, but in sports globally. And I think that is our rightful place. And again, want to remain committed to our strategic plan over the next 4 years, well, next 3 years, going up to 2027. I am quite happy and comforted knowing that we are going to achieve those desirable outcomes. So I'll pause for now and pass over to Chris. Hopefully he has some good news for you. Right, but I'll pause for now. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Now, to give some context on where we are today and why decisive action is necessary, I now welcome our CEO, Mr. Chris Darren, to present on the current state of play.
Thank you very much, Randy, and good morning, everybody here, my colleagues, and everybody online. So, I've had a very rough introduction or reintroduction to West Indies cricket. The team having been bowled out for 27 at Sabino Park, the lowest in our history, and recently been beaten by minnows that people would refer to them as Nepal. But I think those two examples are symptomatic of where we are with West Indies cricket. We have to take an honest look at ourselves and understand that we're not going to get out of where we are without a long-term vision, a long-term plan, and an execution of those plans based on the resources that we have. And so from time to time, we are going to have to deal with the task at hand, even while we execute a long-term re-engineering, repurposing, reimagining of West Indies cricket to take us back to where we belong. The year 25-26 financial year for us is going to be one of those tasks at hand that we have to deal with. And it's going to be a very challenging financial year for us. And I want to be able to everybody to understand the context of all the changes, all the proposals, all the structures of tournaments that we're going to speak about today. It's no secret that West Indies cricket suffers from a cyclical scenario where when we host countries like India or England, we're able to hold our head above water, because those tours tend to pay for themselves. The international broadcast rights for the television product that we produce then helps us to fund all the development programs, all the tournaments that we host every year. When we have to host Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and New Zealand, as much as we enjoy the cricket playing against them, hosting those teams comes with a financial price. It's a price that we have to pay to keep our seat at the head table at the ICC and become full and retain our full membership. It's a simple fact of life that we have to host these tours. It's under the Future Tours program that we agreed to. But you're not going to be able to recoup even the television production costs of those tours, much less make a profit to then pay for all the developmental tournaments. And we host, people maybe don't appreciate the number of events and tournaments that Cricket West Indies hosts. We host over 33 events next year. Tours, tournaments, overseas tours, domestic leagues, training camps, and so on. Over 33 are planned for next year. And that's in fact slightly reduced because we've had to make some fairly significant changes to those tournaments and tours, simply because we're simply not going to have the cash. The President would have spoken about the fantastic job Cricket West Indies would have done in hosting Cricket World Cup in 2024. And of course, that would have given Cricket West Indies a surplus that would allow it to pay off prior debts that would have been accumulated, plus pay for the debts that we are going to incur, or would have incurred this financial year hosting Australia and Pakistan. Because again, that is a year where teams that are touring do not help us generate sufficient revenues internationally. The structure of world cricket forced that upon Cricket West Indies many years ago in 1997, when the ICC decided in their wisdom to change the financial model of how revenues were distributed on bilateral cricket. Cricket West Indies, or West Indies Cricket at the time, was the only cricket board that was able to command significant touring fees. So we in fact used to make more money when we toured than hosting, because hosting was a cost. But when we toured, because countries wanted to host us, we were such an attractive team, they would pay us a significant piece of the revenues that they were generated. But the world saw what was happening with television rights, and every board decided that they wanted to keep those television rights to themselves, knowing how quickly they were going to be growing. And Cricket West Indies was caught as the only board with no domestic TV rights at the time. And we were the only one caught out with that. So we were outvoted 9-1. The financial model changed. We spoke ad nauseum at ICC about what it would do to Cricket West Indies. But the fact of the matter is, having beaten the world for 20 years, there were some happy faces in the room when they realized what it would do to Cricket West Indies. Fast forward to today, nothing has changed. Except, and the President will probably bear this out, you're starting to hear the crying from other cricket boards that they're facing similar situations, a similar reality to Cricket West Indies and West Indies cricket. So we probably have a better chance than before of convincing the ICC to change that financial model. So we are going to struggle financially next year, but it is something we're committed to do. There's certain elements that we have absolutely kept sacrosanct, our players' fees, our retainer program. Those are things that we've said we cannot touch. We have to find the money to make sure our players are compensated, our players have an adequate retainer, and so on. We're keeping most of our tournaments. We've had to do away with a couple with which we had planned, such as the under-17 tournament we had planned, but we simply can't do it next year. But all in all, next year what we're calling is a pumping the brakes a little to go around this very sharp curve to ensure that we can then go back on the highway in 2026, 27. So that's the general context. But we're not standing still during this period. From a re-engineering process, the president spoke about the strategic plan of the long run. Well, in keeping in that fast bowling theme, we have a four-prong attack that we are working on. First, the president mentioned the financial model at the ICC. We are continuing our lobbying efforts, and we've had, encouraging discussions with the ICC that they are actually willing to listen and hear our views once more, presumably because also they're hearing it from other test-playing countries as well. The second prong has got to be a re-engineering of cricket in the Caribbean, an entire reimagining of how it is. Cricket West Indies is the only regional body, the only sport that literally pays for everything to do with our regional tournaments. The only sport. So when a team comes from Jamaica, comes from Barbados, comes from Guyana, Cricket West Indies pays for everything. The airlift, the hotels, all costs of the tournament, etc. That doesn't happen in any other sport, where national teams are usually supported by their countries. So it's a very unusual structure. And maybe back in the 1960s, when it was one tournament, which is when it started with the Shell Shield, that was adequate. But now when you're hosting 25 or 30 of these tournaments and events, it becomes much more unsustainable. And we're starting to feel the pinch of it, and so we need to have an entire reimagining of how we do our domestic tournaments, how we spend our developmental funds, and so on. So there's an entire re-engineering that has to take place there. The third prong is CARICOM. And we've had very fruitful discussions with CARICOM in terms of getting the CARICOM subcommittee much more active, engaged in some of the challenges that we have, explaining those challenges and helping us to come up with those solutions. We're not going to be able to do it alone. There's no question about that, and we need the help of our governments to work with us, understanding the actual issues rather than any what is perceived to be issues, actual issues, and work through those factors to see how we can re-engineer and get much more CARICOM government support in how we develop West Indies cricket to put us back on this world stage. The fourth prong is the corporate Caribbean and getting more support from corporate Caribbean, not by largesse or gift or love of West Indies cricket. We understand that corporates want to make money and they want to get to see a return on their investment. So I'll give you an example. Our airline, we spend roughly $5.5 million US every year on airlines. We spend maybe $9 million US a year. Direct spend. You can probably double that at least if you think about the visiting fans that have to stay in those same hotels, use the same airlines and so on. So you're talking about over a 10-year period, maybe $100 million US that we are putting into the Caribbean economies and putting into those airlines pockets and those hotels pockets. I can't tell you if we get one red penny of sponsorship from any of those entities. And we're not asking for largesse, as I said. This is your economic return. This is a product that should be important to you. And so we're going to be targeting corporate Caribbean to ensure that they understand the importance and the value of West Indies cricket to them, just as a pure economic value, and trying to get them much more engaged in it. Because all they need to do is do the calculation if West Indies cricket was to go away, what it would do to their bottom line. There's a fifth prong, which we're keeping on the sidelines until we are ready to reveal. But that's involving an entire look at our commercial strategy, getting engaged in non-traditional commercial activity that perhaps might seem strange to some when we do come with the more formalized plans and so on. But we have to find non-traditional ways of earning revenues, and so we're exploring very actively a number of these ideas and products and promotions and operations. And we hope that some of them will materialize, and if they do, that it will hopefully redound to the benefit of Cricket West Indies and West Indies cricket. So there we are. Next year is going to be a very challenging year for us. We've already gone through a very financially challenging financial year. The cash reserves that we would have gained out of Cricket World Cup are gone. We now have to start again, but it's nothing new. We go through this cycle every 4 years. So it's nothing new, and we're very confident we'll be able to come through on the other side and continue the long-run strategic plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Now, I would like to first make apologies for the absence of Mr. Enoch Lewis, our chair of the Cricket Strategy and Efficiency Committee. He would have been tasked with the responsibility of doing a recap of the areas of concern and outcomes that would have come out of the meeting held in Trinidad in August. But taking that responsibility on today will be our Director of Cricket, Mr. Miles Bascom, who will also be speaking to, or also be sharing, I should say, the various approaches to cricket operations for 2025-2026, which we have spoken about here, and the changes that will be coming on board. And that includes talking about regional tournaments, player contracts, preparations for international competition, and other such matters. So now I invite the Director of Cricket, Mr. Miles Bascom.
Thank you, Randy, and good morning to my fellow members of staff in the room and the media online. On August 10th and 11th, we held a very important strategic meeting that followed a very disappointing score of 27 in the third test against Australia and Jamaica. We had 2 days of very intensive discussion. Cricket brains, the likes of Brian Lara, Sir Clive. It was a very enlightening couple of days, and many recommendations came out of that meeting. Following the collation of those recommendations, management met, and that was the process that we outlined at the press conference. That was the process that we outlined at the press conference following that two-day meeting. That management will look over the recommendations, refine further, go back to the cricket strategy and officiating committee, and finally submit recommendations to the Board of Directors. So the Board of Directors met on the 25th of September, and they had the benefit of those recommendations. And we got approval for a number of actions, which I would outline now. In recognition of the need for development of capacity in terms of skill, there was a lot of talk about the skill deficit that exists between our players and what is required at the international level, particularly in batting, but definitely across the board generally. The board approved the recruitment of a batting coach/consultant, ideally on a full-time basis, but also possibly based on availability, short, extended stints at our high performance center here at Coolidge. The recruitment of full-time performance coaches, sports psychologists who will be embedded in the senior men's and women's team, specifically tasked with ensuring culture, the culture that we want as a Cricket West Indies body. We want that to ripple through our senior teams, as well as developing a mental skills development and support framework for all of the lower levels as well. The board also approved the High Performance Center project. The CEO would have spoken about this before and made certain promises that we definitely are going to work to keep. So this should be a state-of-the-art facility, indoor nets, gym, and a recovery center right here at Coolidge. Plans are already on the way to bring that to fruition. Of the many recommendations, quite a number of them require further refining. So the board has given the cricket strategy and officiating committee approval to commission smaller working groups to further refine many of those recommendations. For example, we have been tasked with establishing a national cricket development framework, and that is, of course, intended to be rolled out across the region with the support of governments, territorial boards, national Olympic committees, etc., etc. So the CEO would have, and President would have spoken to conversations had with President Ali, and I think this was one of the areas that he also supported, that we definitely need to have a template for how we develop cricket across the territories in the West Indies, and we will definitely develop a working group that will refine that process into actionable items and then take it to the stakeholders for implementation. There was also a lot of discussion around the franchise system and its ability to deliver on high performance outcomes. So again, there will be another working group. This would probably be the third iteration of a review of the franchise system. And it is very crucial to our performance as Cricket West Indies. High performance is probably that layer in our cricket system that is most underserved. So we have been able to bring many of our players to a certain point, but not been able to get them to perform consistently at the international level. As the CEO said, there is never a shortage of talent, all right? And the CEO speaks to that athletic quotient that we have in the region. Where we have failed somewhat is in our ability to really bring that talent to its full potential. And so we have to continue to revise our high performance strategy, and we have to ensure that we are implementing high performance programs across the region so that we can compound the benefits of those programs. So this process will be an ongoing one. We will continue to refine those recommendations and bring plans back to the cricket strategy and officiating committee, back to the board of directors, and then implement them across the region. So there is a lot more to come from all of those recommendations that came out of that two-day meeting, and as usual, we will bring them to the public through forum like these. I want to move on to our regional tournaments. So the CEO and President spoke to the financial challenges that we will face in 25-26. And as a result of that, the cricket department was tasked with ensuring that our tournaments help our counterparts in finance to meet their objectives as well as meet ours. So we will see a reduction in many cases in the number of matches across tournaments. Unfortunately, we are also likely to see the CCC and the Academy being withdrawn from our West Indies Championship and Super 50 tournaments. And of course, that does not mean that those players do not have the opportunity to participate in those tournaments, because they will have the opportunity to return to their franchises and vie for a spot in those teams. That should definitely add to the competition for places and certainly help to improve the quality of a more compact and competitive tournament. In the women's tournament, we are likely to revert to merging the T20 and ODI formats back into a singular tournament that is likely to be held ahead of the Sri Lanka series in February. We are confident, however, that all the plans that we have in place, we are planning to put a shift onto skill development. So, for example, our senior women players will be in camp for 8 weeks from November pretty much to Christmas, working on developing their skills. Then they are expected to train with their respective territorial teams heading into the regional tournament in January, and then move into international competition in that first series of the year against Sri Lanka. The CEO spoke to the deferral of the under-17, the boys under-17 tournament. And what we have done to compensate for that is to go back to having an extended under-19 tournament where players will be exposed to both red and white ball formats. We have also discussed and agreed to return that age to under 19. As most people would be aware, following COVID, these tournaments, this particular tournament became a 19 and under tournament to allow players who would have suffered for not having the opportunity to participate in the tournament due to COVID to have that opportunity. And we think the time is right now to revert to that tournament being 19 and under, which would allow the most promising under-17 players who are missing that under-17 tournament this year to get into the under-19 team and participate in that extended under-19 tournament. I must mention that our West Indies under-19 team that is preparing for the World Cup in January 2026, we have ensured that we kept the plans for their preparation. They would have completed an under-19 international series against Sri Lanka, winning that series, and we have another series planned against England and potentially the USA in November. So they will have another at least 7 international youth ODI matches in that series, which should put them in a very good position heading into a World Cup in January. So just to reiterate that the changes to these tournaments, though forced, we have tried to ensure that there is enough cricket that we can have a good account of our player pool. Players have enough time and opportunity to give a good account of themselves and make themselves eligible for selection to West Indies teams. We will work with the franchises and territorial boards to ensure that there is targeted training so that players can hit the ground running when they come to these tournaments, as there will likely be very little time to take 1 or 2 or 3 matches to get up to speed. Coming out of the meeting as well, as I said, a lot of focus was on bridging that gap in terms of skill between our regional players and what is required at the international levels. So we have prioritized mainly to keep tactical camps and skill-based camps to ensure that we work on addressing that skill deficit And while the tournaments may be, there may be decreased matches in our tournaments, our players will definitely be better prepared to make use of the matches that they do have. In terms of the international series schedule, there had to be cost considerations here as well in terms of venues. So there are likely to be changes in terms of the number of matches, the number of venues that we use generally, and the number of matches per venue. Just for context, moving countries with an international touring party requires charter flights, it requires air freight for production equipment, and that cost is at a minimum around $200,000 per hop, right? So every one of those hops that we are able to cut out saves the company $200,000 at a minimum. We would also need a lot of support from governments in terms of concessions. Many of them already offer these concessions to us. And so the preliminary countries that have been identified for matches have been those countries who have traditionally offered us that support. And we will be writing to them in short order to ensure that we can continue to enjoy that support, because our budget assumptions assumed that support. If we are unable to get that support, we may be forced to consider alternative venues, but we are quite confident, given the relationships that we have with many of these governments, that we will enjoy that support, and we will have extended cricket in many cases in the countries that will be selected to host these matches eventually. In terms of player contracts, the senior men and senior women men's academy lists would have been released in the press yesterday. Just to give a little bit of context, we have taken steps to align our contract offerings with ICC global events. We're moving towards having longer term contracts for players who we expect to feature across the period leading into those global events. A number of 2-year contracts have been offered, following up on 6 2-year contracts that were offered last year for men's. Hope Seals, Alzari and Shamar Joseph and Brandon King, along with Gudakesh Moti, will continue on 2-year contracts. And Carty, Chase, Graves, Rutherford and Warwicken have been offered 2-year contracts. Senior women's, Deandra Dottin and Henry have been offered 2-year contracts, and that is following our captain Haley Matthews and Shemaine Campbell, who are continuing on 2-year contracts. We are also doubling down and investing in our up-and-comers, young players who have made an impact at the international level and who we want to continue to invest in because they have very high potential. Jediah Blades, Johan Lane, and Joel Andrew, 3 players who have featured at the international level, albeit Lane is yet to be capped. But we definitely recognize the need to start from very early, which was another one of the points that was borne out in that today meeting, that we need to capture our players, we need to expose them much earlier and invest in their development. Claxton, Jazara Claxton, and Liliana Grimmond. Those are the two female players who have been issued development contracts. And for the same reason, they have had promising starts to their fledgling international careers. And we are confident that with continued support that they will become the international stars that they are capable of being. That's it for me, Randy. I'll take questions as they come.
Thank you, Miles. As Miles said, we will open the floor for questions from the media. Those of you who are joining us via Teams, as I said earlier, you would have raised your hand and you'll be present in the current queue. So I will begin with the first person here in order, Mr. Philip Spooner. You may go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Good morning, Randy. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone at the head table. Appreciate the time. I just wanted to ask a few questions of the CEO and the Director of Cricket. And the first one for the CEO is if he could shed some light on the group of legends that will be joining the team in India and the nature of the visit, what it includes, and how does CWI plan to leverage this opportunity in obviously the biggest cricket market on the planet. And then for Miles, it is understood that Barbados will be hosting Sri Lanka next year for the test match. If he could outline any other itinerary in the schedule, especially the women's test match against Australia, which would be a first. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Philip. So I want to put on record on behalf of Cricket West Indies and all cricket-loving fans across the region our sincere thanks and appreciation to Messrs. Brian Lara, Sir Vivian Richards, and Sir Richie Richardson, who have volunteered for Mission India, where we're going to be meeting with various broadcasters, sponsors, all of corporate India, in an effort to remind them that West Indies cricket is simply not a commercial entity for them to buy broadcast rights, but it is a legacy that we've given to the world, that the world almost owes us to reinvest in us. And that is the purpose of taking Brian, Sir Viv, and Sir Richie, who I must say volunteered immediately to act on this mission. Obviously had to move around their calendar to accommodate it all, but we're very hopeful that having those gentlemen in our meetings with broadcasters and corporate sponsors, etc., reminds the world of who we are and what it is that they actually are investing in when they purchase our broadcast rights. You can't treat us like everybody else as a commercial venture. Myself and the commercial director sitting in front of the broadcaster, it's strictly a commercial discussion. I'd like to see a broadcaster who has long admired Sir Viv Richards tell us that he's going to treat us like any other cricket organization trying to sell their television rights. The other thing that we're going to be doing is on the 8th of October hosting a corporate golf event where in association with our commercial partner in India, TCM, they've invited literally the who's who of corporate India, the biggest corporations of the world, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs are going to be participating, which is should be a strong reminder to corporate Caribbean about the global platform that Cricket West Indies and the West Indies cricket product provides for you. I don't know if any study has been done on the amount of visitors to the region or everyday tourism product, the amount of visitors to the region end up actually being high profile, high net worth investors in the region. And so the adjunct, the linkage between tourism and investment, the linkage between West Indies cricket and tourism and then investment is probably not understood. But I think this corporate golf event just reminded me in very stark, ways just what an incredible communication platform West Indies cricket is, where you can rub shoulders with some of the most powerful names, the most powerful people in the world, all who are simply dying to play in the group with Viv Richards or Brian Lara. I haven't seen the clamoring for people to play in the group with me, but I'm still hopeful. So listen, it's a mission because we have a number of engagements with India over the next couple of years, including one-day series. We have the test series coming up and so on. And we're hoping to stimulate the Indian market from a commercial perspective for the benefit of West Indies cricket.
Randy, if I might ask another question here, to the CEO, as you indicated, West Indies cricket is a product which people travel the world to see. Why then is there no West Indies museum across the region?
So you've just hinted at one of the fifth prong that I mentioned, the commercial activities that we're actively engaged in. It is a part and parcel of the High Performance Center, Cricket Academy program that we're looking at here in Antigua. But you know, it's something that we're going to need the help. There's so many probably artifacts of West Indies cricket that are in the hands of private collectors across the region that you can actually lend that, that artifact, because we want to take the museum in a direction where people understand the true history of West Indies cricket, what it has meant to the region. I think there's so much probably private footage, private pictures, private artifacts that are sitting in people's basements or attics from a great-grandfather who might have played for the West Indies and so on, that we're going to embark on an entire collection drive to have those on display so that people can feel a part of West Indies cricket.
Thank you very much.
With regards to your question about venue allocation, Philip, as I mentioned, we have been forced to review our venue allocations for international series in 2026. And we definitely prefer to communicate to the potential host countries before confirming publicly, as confirmation will be contingent on getting support from governments and getting MOUs signed. So as soon as we have those assurances, we will definitely be releasing our formal schedule.
Okay, from a Barbados point of view, can you confirm, however, that Barbados was offered the Sri Lanka test match for next year?
I'm sorry, Philip. I think Miles stated very clearly that we can't speak to that until those offers are formally made and those discussions are formally had. Any more questions?
Okay, can you tell us who else is coming besides Sri Lanka next year and how many matches are scheduled? Obviously, you're not going to tell us the venues and the dates, but how many matches in each format we'll be facing, as well as if the women's test is still on.
Okay, so men's, we have Sri Lanka. We start the home series, the men's aspect of it at least, with Sri Lanka with a full tour. All three formats, 3 ODIs, 3 T20s, and 2 test matches. Then we move on to New Zealand, which is a white ball series, 3 ODIs and 3 T20 internationals. And then Pakistan, which is a test series consisting of 2 test matches. Women's, we have Sri Lanka, 6 white ball matches, 3 ODIs and 3 T20 internationals. Australia, full format series, including 1 test match. And we finished the year with Pakistan, which is a white ball series, 3 ODIs and 3 T20Is.
Okay, thank you very much, Rich. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Philip. I'll move on now to Mr. Ian Watson, and I'd like our media to please keep in mind that we don't want to run the meeting too long, so we appreciate if you can keep your questions to 2 and keep them as concise as possible. Ian?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Have there been any thought, just like the CPL, that we could invite or have international players play in the 4-day competition so that they can be able to enhance and help and the local players here.
We already have in our playing conditions the opportunity for franchises to have one international player. And I think there are some conditions that come along with that in terms of offsetting their costs. So 50% of that cost would have to be sponsored or effectively not coming from CWI coffers, as of course our limited resources we try to keep for our players. But that already exists in our playing conditions to allow for one international player per franchise.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, I've heard a lot of talk and plans about the coaching when it comes to the under 19s, when it comes to the academy and things like that. But what emphasis is being placed on the lower level coaches, the 5-year-olds, the 6-year-olds, the 7-year-olds, where these cricketers will now be getting into the game in their formative years, because we all know it's very difficult to bend an old tree. So you can have all the best coaches coaching the 19-year-olds and the 20-year-olds, but it's very difficult to get them out of that, for want of a better word, bad habit of playing and batting and things like that. What emphasis is being placed in the lower level coaches, in level lower systems, and more importantly, when it comes to certifying these coaches?
So we definitely can't dictate where coaches coach. What we try to do is ensure that we facilitate the certification of coaches. Where we have our grassroots program, mainly in the form of the FIFA Fund program, we have actually see both of them in the room here, a couple of coach developers that go around and try to ensure that the persons who are interfacing with the kids at that level are suitably qualified to deliver those programs. We are in the process of relooking and retooling our coaching certification program to ensure that it becomes highly competence-based, so that whoever CWI issues a certificate to, any territory should be confident that they can deliver the programs as expected of them at the respective levels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'd also like to remind the media, when you unmute your mic, please identify yourself by name and media house. Next, we have Mr. Junior Codling.
Yeah, good morning to you all. Junior Codling. I am from the Development Academy Media arm. Morning to you, CEO and Mr. President and Mr. Director of Cricket, and to the rest of folks. Based on what I would have heard, it kind of my question, because I was more asking if the gesture that we would have given to Nepal by playing them in that series, if we were expecting to host them back, you know. But based on what you have said, I will forego that question. But to you, Mr. CEO, have you made any progress in getting sponsors on board for West Indies cricket, so it could supplement some of the tournaments that normally the organization would pay for? How advanced are you in those discussions with these private entities? And also, have you been talking to those in Guyana, since it is the richest country in the Caribbean now, and what they could do for West Indies cricket?
So we have a commercial team that have been very, very active. And in fact, you would have seen two significant new sponsors come on board, Coca-Cola and Quartz, during the last test series. They're very active, and there's a number of discussions in the pipeline that we obviously can't disclose until we actually have a deal. But sponsorship is going to be critical, and as I said before, it's one of the main prongs that we have to fight and succeed at if we're going to be successful. Getting commercial entities to understand and appreciate the commercial value of Cricket West Indies, not just, and again, I emphasize that it's all, it's nice when people love West Indies cricket and appreciate it as a cricket product, but as a pure communication platform, it makes absolute commercial sense, and we need to try and educate the population much more in terms of how it can benefit their organizations. That was it. Yeah. So yeah, we are making progress, but commercial activities is a slow burn. We have to be patient. We have to keep negotiating with companies. We have to keep exposing the product. I know it doesn't help when you get bowled out for 27, or to most people's minds, it doesn't help. But the reality is that sponsors, if they're looking at it as a pure economic return, I'll never forget, and I use this example all the time. When Sandals sponsored the West Indies on a tour to England, and we got bowled out for 50 at Lord's, that afternoon Butch Stewart was beside me, and he was actually distraught as a West Indies fan, because this is his team that he loves and supports, and that's the owner of Sandals. But he was actually ecstatic about the viewership that afternoon in England, where his brand was being exposed to over 5 million people that afternoon, which was the highest cricket I'd ever gotten to in England. And Tim Henman was playing in the semi-final that afternoon at Wimbledon, which, if those who remember, Tim Henman was England's shining star. And that afternoon at Lord's broke all viewership records, and the Sandals switchboard was ringing off the hook that afternoon for tours. And so he was torn between the joy of that for his business and the sorrow of West Indies cricket losing. So sponsorship is a much more complex thing than simply just a team winning and losing. That's the point I want to make.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. CEO. To Mr. Director of Cricket, sir, you have talked about the lack of competition and the reduced competition here in the Caribbean because of the financial strain. So have you a plan like we do now in football, where we look in the international market for persons that are of West Indian heritage if they can lend their service to West Indies? And this is on the backdrop of what would have happened in the UAE with West Indies being blown away in the series, because many of our better players had to be in India. So are you willing to open the pool to look on players that are not necessarily playing in our competition, but playing in other parts of the world that can come and represent West Indies? And with that being said, thank you all for the opportunity to pose my questions.
Thank you, Junior. And the short answer is yes. Our senior talent manager has reached out to a number of players of West Indian descent. I wouldn't name names. Obviously, they are engaged in foreign leagues and have contracts, etc. But we have had some conversations. And the door is always open to any West Indian who is eligible to play for West Indies. We will definitely consider them for selection. We have had some persons reach out having interest in participating in our first class tournament, and we pretty much have directed them to different franchises so that they can try to get into those teams. So the answer is yes. We are exploring all avenues. West Indian talent anywhere is still West Indian talent. So we are happy to consider them.
Next question from Mr. Gayasi Merrick. You may unmute your mic and proceed with your question. Okay, I'll move on to Joel Bailey. Joel, are you there? Going once, going twice. Marshall Hewitt.
Yep, how you doing? Marshall Hewitt, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. First question to, I think, Miles for this one, but it might be Chris, depending on the interpretation of the question. It was raised earlier on about finances and obviously the strain that is placed on Cricket West Indies with regards to finances. And I'm just wondering, when money is allocated to the different territories with regards to the financial stipends they get for the calendar year, how much of that money, or is it all of that money, which is put towards the domestic-based franchise contracts, etc.? How much leeway do the franchises within the territories have in terms of...
Good morning.
Yes. Oh.
Morning to all.
You give us a second,
Yes,
Joel.
good
You have
morning.
another question
Yes,
being
hi,
posed
I'm
at the
here.
point in
Can you
time.
hear me?
Can I continue?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, sorry. So how much of that money is are the territories expected to use for developmental practices, or is it purely for contracts and little else? That's the first question.
Thanks, Marshall. So there's a clear separation between funds that are earmarked for development and funds that go to players. In many cases, we pay players directly, and so the funds that are earmarked for development is for just that.
Thank you. And then I guess that then leads to the second one, which I think Chris will possibly want to take. Chris mentioned corporate funding and the need to try and reach out to the corporate Caribbean, etc. Chris, in terms of the individual territories, and Miles as well, I guess, because you may want to come in terms of the individual territories, how much expectation is put on them to also, territorial boards, I'm saying, to also reach out for corporate funding? So, for example, let's take Barbados, for example. There is nothing to stop the Barbados Cricket Association organising a tour to Jamaica, for example, and Barbados play Jamaica in a bilateral tour of their own. So how much is expected for Cricket West Indies to lead the way in terms of driving corporate engagement, and how much expectation is put on territories to also get meaningful corporate engagement into their own cricketing activities in their respective nations?
Thank you, Marshall. So I did mention the fact that an entire re-engineering of West Indies cricket needs to be had, because it's just not sustainable, Cricket West Indies paying everything for every tournament, for every national team. But I can't just simply throw it back, I can't just simply throw it back on the territorial boards, because at the end of the day, the challenge that West Indies cricket has is that the national team is the West Indies. The one that gets the international exposure is the West Indies. So Barbados playing Jamaica, there's not necessarily enough political incentive for Barbados government to invest in a tour to Jamaica, because there's not enough international exposure, etc. It's purely developmental. And what we've always found in the Caribbean, when you have scarce resources, governments are going to be forced to invest in those things that are much more nationalistic in their outcome and in their endeavors. But we do, one of the reasons why the President and myself have been pursuing so vigorously the Olympic program, the Pan American Games program, because those programs actually now have national opportunities for Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, even St. Vincent and Antigua to participate now on the international stage and therefore give international exposure to those countries, which we hope will encourage individual countries to start investing more in their product because there is an international return from a brand value perspective. So we have to re-engineer our cricketing calendar to encourage that. That includes events like the Bolivarian Games, where a number of our countries are going to be competing. It includes the Pan American Games, where cricket is on the agenda for 2027. It includes the Olympics, where cricket is on the agenda for 2028. So all of that, we're going to have to create a new cadence of cricket tournaments, cricket events in the Caribbean that encourages national resources to be invested to augment the international commercial resources that Cricket West Indies is able to deliver.
Thank you. Thank you, Marshall. Move on to Joel Billy. I will give you this opportunity now if you're there.
Hi, good morning. You hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi. Hope all is well. I just have two questions, suppose, would be either to Dr. Shallow or Miles Bascom. Hope all you all are good. Two questions I wanted, well, there are three, but I may wanted to limit it to two, so I'll keep it at two. Firstly, looking at the player contracts, I noticed that earlier this year, there was talk, well, it was confirmed that 6 players were identified as potential test captains, but only 3 have been given retainer contracts. How is it that in the space of a few months, the likes of Steven and Black, Joshua De Silva, and John Campbell, who were seen as potential test captains, are no longer considered for retainer contracts? That's one question. And the second question, this question was posed to Chris Darren last evening on a radio show, and it had to deal with the coach and selector, I mean, coaching at CPL level. Now, I know last year it was said that he had a contract with St. Lucia Kings, but how is it that he's able to be still coaching in the CPL this year and have to be selector and coach, selector in all formats, coach in all formats, and still coaching in the CPL? How is that possible or feasible? Thanks so much and have a blessed day. And if anything, I'm going to come back later for the other questions, but thanks so much nonetheless.
Thank you, Joel. So with regards to international retainer contracts, the primary consideration for the award of international retainer contracts is the likelihood of being a part of West Indies teams in the upcoming contract period. So it's purely on the likelihood to play. But what we must also remember is that our contract framework it goes beyond just international retainer contracts. We have 90 regional franchise contracts. So all of the players that would have been in that exercise where we were searching for a West Indies test captain, 3 of them, as you mentioned, would be in the international retainer contract list, and the other 3 are among the 90 regional franchised contract lists. So we cannot look at it strictly as the 15 players who have international retainer contracts. We have 105 retained players across the region who we expect to be viable West Indian players.
Thanks, and I'll take the second question, only because Darren's contract was signed before Chris started as his CEO. But as Chris said last night on the program, I believe, I think he clearly stated that there's absolutely no conflict with the 2 roles. But I think importantly, when we agreed to his participation in CPL, it was mainly because we thought that the exposure, it presented a very great opportunity for him as coach to, one, be very close to the game, and for his own personal development. I mean, the CPL is all about developing our talent, and talent doesn't just, it doesn't stop at just the players. It coaches, is the other backroom staff, we see other physio, SNCs, and so on. And so we thought that his continued engagement in CPL, whether for Kings or anyone else, would be to the benefit of Cricket West Indies and West Indies cricket.
Thank you, President. Mr. Dayasi Merrick, just checking to see if you're there with us now. If not, I will move on to. All right, is it there? Yeah.
I
Yep.
am back.
We can hear you.
I'm back. I'm here. I'm not sure if it would have been asked previously, but I believe Mr. Derry made mention of the necessity of having to engage the CARICOM body for some workarounds to help the situation financially, especially. Whether perceived or real, there would have been certain, I guess, obstacles to that in the past. What is it just because the financial situation is so dire now that they are willing to, or that CWI rather is willing to engage CARICOM in this manner? And the other question is, upon demitting office last year, the previous CEO would have stated that he left CWI with I believe it was a $40 million surplus, or in the region of, that's no insignificant sum. I do understand the areas that Mr. Daring and even Miles would have outlined as to how that money would have quickly vanished or dissipated. But can we get some clarity as to whether that there may have been some maybe oversight in the spending of that?
No, there's no oversight in the spending. I don't think people understand the scale of expenditures an organization like Cricket West Indies has annually. A regional the one-day tournament. If we were to do that budget, do that tournament in the same way we did it last year, you're talking about a $4 million budget. That's just one of 33 events that we would have to fund in any given year. So even if 40 million had been earned from the Cricket World Cup, I don't believe that figure is correct. That disappears very quickly in a year where you don't have a Cricket World Cup or revenues of that nature. And that is the scale that you're now talking about. In years gone by, how I explained it to President Ali, I gave him the analogy that we know that CARICOM governments do make a contribution, and corporate Caribbean do make a contribution. And let us say that contribution is $1. Cricket West Indies also contributes $1. And back in the days of Clive Lloyd and so on in the 70s and 80s, that $2 that we were collectively putting into West Indies cricket was enough to keep us at the head table. But unfortunately now in the modern paradigm of professional sports, you're talking you need probably $20 to keep your seat at the head table. But we're not asking to get to $20. I think with just our sheer athletic quotient, all we need to do is to get to maybe $4 or $5, and we can get back on the world stage because we have the athletic talent that can bridge that gap. And so the approach to CARICOM is nothing new. CARICOM has always voiced its support. The challenge is when you do get into the individual countries, having decisions been made at CARICOM, Cricket West Indies falls into the same trap that many other initiatives that CARICOM has tried to implement across the region. Back in the late 90s, CARICOM approved a regional lottery. But of course, Cricket West Indies then they went into the individual countries to get the licenses, and they weren't able to get them. And so, CARICOM itself and the Caribbean has certain challenges that Cricket West Indies falls into, but we just have to keep knocking at the door. And one day, somebody is going to let us in.
Mr. Akeem Green.
Hi, good morning. Just two questions. I think both of them will be for Miles. The first one, I was made to understand that Guyana was supposed to be hosting the Super 50, this year's Super 50 in November, December, along with Trinidad and Tobago. Is there any way you could shed some clarity on whether that is a factor or not?
So initially, I think last year when we propose our first draft of our regional schedule, we discussed the possibility of the final rounds of the Super 50 moving from Trinidad to Guyana. But that was always pending some discussions around the cost that will be associated with that move. So we have continued and followed up on those discussions, trying to ascertain the appetite of the GCB to cover those costs, to have those matches played, and I don't think that that appetite exists. So as it stands, and that was even before the discussions coming out of our budget discussions. So that is not likely to be the case, and the Super 50 will be played in a revised format and likely in Trinidad.
If you could just quickly follow up, if you were allowed to give the approximate cost that Guyana would have had to, or the GCB to host those semi-final and final?
I can't give you the figure offhand, but it was not insignificant. I mentioned earlier how much it generally costs for a hop across with 2 international teams, and that figure was around $200,000. And so if you're talking about the final round of a Super 50 tournament with 4 regional teams and a production crew and equipment, we could extrapolate a little bit beyond that 200,000 US mark.
And just finally, Miles, well, you're the only technical person I can ask this, but how I guess, worrying is it at times? I look at the Nepal series that a lot of the future players that are probably going to be wearing West Indies colors, they're also struggling with some of the same technical deficiencies that we see that are present with our senior players. I guess this must be worrying from a director cricket point of view that at times the younger generation are really showing, I guess, that ability not to play spin well, etc., but they seem to have some struggles with issues that I guess the next generation already have. And some of these players, you have them for a while in the academy structure.
Well, the Nepal series has always been earmarked as an opportunity for exposure for emerging talent. We always knew that turnaround time would have been a challenge. They pretty much had 1 day to acclimatize and 1 practice session going into that series. And in a very short tournament of 3 matches, if you're not off the ground running from match 1, you can very well find yourself behind the 8 ball, as we did. But as I mentioned, the opportunity for exposure has been key. We need more information in terms of filling some of those positions, shoring up some of the positions that we have in our international T20 team. And while we saw some struggle in those first couple of games, we definitely saw what we all knew in terms of what we saw in CPL and what we saw in the Breakout League, that we definitely have quality in that group, and we have capable players. So I think that series, albeit a very disappointing loss, we were still able to identify some options. We have seen some players that have come all the way from the Breakout League all the way through now into international T20 cricket, and have shown that they may have what it takes to make the step up to the international level. So while I wouldn't want to disarm anyone of that very that emotional response to a West Indies loss to Mino, as the CEO puts it, we still need to be able to expose our players and give them that opportunity to shine in challenging conditions. So I'm quite confident that we have seen some good signs. We have definitely seen some of these young players, as I said, that came all the way through from the breakout league, through the CPL, and now, showing that they have what it takes at the international level.
Thank you, Miles. Mr. Dennis Health.
Good afternoon to you all. This is Dennis Heath from the Cricket Show USA. Question that is directed mostly to Mr. Bascom. Can you clarify for us the discussion around the full-time sports psychologist? Will there likely be one for the male, one for the female, and what of the younger players coming up? Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, so the intention is for us to have one with the senior men's team that will also be responsible for developing the mental skills development and support framework across men's cricket at the lower levels. We already have one with the senior women's team, albeit on a part-time basis. So we are looking at the possibilities of that engagement becoming more full-time, so that we can have that support for that mental skills framework at the lower levels as well. The academy here in Antigua, we have someone who works along with our academy players as well as our under 19 boys. So there is an existing framework, and the intention is to bolster that by having more full-time persons engaged.
Can I have one follow-up? And would the psychologists travel with touring teams, or would they have to work away from the team while they're traveling?
So the person with the women's senior team already travels with the team, and we have seen some quite good results from that. So the intention is to have that person with the men's team as well on tour.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you to the members of the panel for your responses to the questions this morning. I'd like to turn over now to our president, Dr. Shallow, to give us some closing remarks to end the session.
I want to join Randy. Somebody trying again. Yeah, I want to join Randy just to thank the media for their participation. Also want to I express my gratitude to Randy and his team for coordinating this event, and to the staff for being here with us. I also recognize my colleague on the board, Kumar Rodney, for joining us this morning, and those who are online, all the other directors as well. Now, you have heard the situation, the current state from Chris and Miles. I would say that we anticipated where we are currently. We planned for it, and that is why we have our strategic plan from 2024 to 2027. Importantly, our approach is really to continue to engage CARICOM, because we realize the importance of their engagement, their involvement. We have identified key areas for us to address, and we are confident that we'll gain some success with that in that regard. Also, ICC, I believe that Chris and I are well positioned to continue being champions there and to help, because we, as Chris mentioned, other full members especially, I think they're currently realizing that what we argued for years ago, they probably should have aligned themselves with us then, and we are hopeful that this time around we'll gain more traction and support at the level, so that we could relook or review the financial model, at least at the ICC level. I think an interesting development, and I am very passionate about the restructuring of our commercial operations or commercial arm, separating it. I think that would present us tremendous opportunities going forward. So that is something we are currently reviewing, looking at. And of course, I remain quite confident that with the prudent management internally at Cricket West Indies, we'll continue to navigate the difficult times. And I'm looking, you'll see me focusing on the CFO as I said that, because she obviously has a major role to play in it. I don't think we made the announcement of our new CFO, Chris. Right, but we are quite pleased with what we have seen so far. She has fit in so seamlessly, I would say. But I think that we are well positioned now, probably more than ever, to navigate what is ahead of us for the next few years. And so let me end where we started, directing us to the long run, anticipating the challenges and anticipating that, our playing conditions may not be ideal. It may not even be, some may say it is unfair when you look at world cricket on a whole. But what I would say as a West Indian, I think all of us would agree that it is in our DNA to come out on top against the odds. It is, we are quite accustomed to optimizing the limited resources. It is how all of us know how to live. And so I'm sure that no one would bet against Cricket West Indies excelling or continuing to excel globally. I remain extremely confident that over the next few years, and we are well on path to see some very successful moments. I enjoy more successful moments. In the short term, I don't think Chris mentioned it, but we have on our targets, the next World Cup, Women's World Cup. In February, we're expecting to lift the trophy then Ladano, right? And certainly Miles and Darren, they have their eyes set firmly on the ODI World Cup in 2027. And, that is one of the discussions we had with President Ali as well, ensuring that we focus on, those victories. And we know that once we continue to stay true to our focus and be committed and continue to work extremely hard both on and off the field, we'll be able to realize these desired outcomes. And again, I just want to continue to express gratitude to all our stakeholders who continue to play a part in building West Indies cricket. And especially I want to thank my esteemed colleagues on the board who are working extremely hard in supporting the staff. And with that, Randy, again, I want to thank you for putting this together and thank all who participated online this morning. So, thanks.
Thank you, President Dr. Kishore Shallow. Thank you to CEO Chris Darren, Director of Cricket Miles Bascom, to all the media who attended online, and to all of those who viewed via YouTube. And we would have sent some questions through our various channels, many of which were answered today already, so we no need to read them up. But thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to engaging with you in the future as we continue to spread information and updates about all that is happening on the Cricket West Indies end, and as we try to chart our way back up to the top. Thank you for joining us.